Okay, we're back, and coming up next, our own Steve Johnson had a chance to talk to David Maines. Now, he's the Executive Director of Mainstay Ministries, and they talk about the perspective and of what's happening with Christian persecution in Nigeria. Now, we know that Christian persecution is going on all over the world, and we have many brothers and sisters who are really suffering and losing their lives, quite frankly, for their faith. And I hope we never forget them and pray for them and do what we can to help them. But I think you'll find this conversation to be pretty inspiring. So let's join Steve Johnson and David Maines.
Dr. Maines, it's great to be able to have you with us, especially since a lot of our listeners and viewers may be familiar with you being on the Chapel of the Air for several decades and your 50-day spiritual adventure, which when I read that, I thought, boy, I remember when that was all happening so often every year, and a lot of our listeners and viewers were a part of that. So I want to talk now about kind of the new era that you are in with your ministry and Mainstay Ministries and Nigeria. Now, we've had an individual who's a friend of theDove who's gone over to try to build a Bible school there, so we've heard a little bit about it. But tell us what is happening in Nigeria and how you got involved in that.
Okay, let me give you just a little background on Nigeria, because sometimes people hear the word and don't know where it is. It's West Africa. It's the 7th largest country in the world, which is surprising to people. It's even bigger population-wise than Russia. The biggest city is Lagos, which is right on the sea, and that's about 11 million people. I'm from Chicago, and when I think 11 million, that is really large. The country speaks English, so it's relatively easy to get around in Nigeria, at least in the southern part. When you go into the north, you get into some tribal languages, which is the area where I went to. You have to understand Nigeria as being about 50-50 Christian, Muslim, and they have lived together for many years. The north is more Muslim, the south is more Christian. Recently, a group called Boko Haram, which is a militant Muslim group, has said they would like to make the northern part, and they demand that they make the northern part of Nigeria under Sharia law, and they have said all people who don't convert or agree, you need to go or we will kill you, and they have been true to their word. So there have been about 2,000 now recorded Christian deaths, and those are not quiet deaths, those are shot or slaughtered. I was there in Nigeria in November. Just about a month before that, there were 26 students pulled out of a given university in the north. They were brought out. They were all Christian. If you listen to BBC, CNN, they talk about what happens, but they don't say these are all Christians necessarily. And each one of them was shot in the head or their throats were cut. So it is a grisly thing that is going on. Two ways you have to understand what is there to get a picture of it in your mind. One is that churches are attacked. Quite often, it's done during worship services. They are set on fire as people flee. They are shot. There'll be 40, 50 of these Boko Haram people there who will try to kill them. Churches, they're not large churches. Churches have tried to post guards, sometimes 2, 3 guards, but they're just shot quickly, overcome, and then the work is done. Then they also go into villages. Sometimes they're Christian villages. Sometimes if you get a little bit larger, it's a mixed group of Muslim Christian. And these people, again, they've lived together, but they will go in and just begin to pick out the Christian homes and kill these people, shoot them. When I heard this first from Dio Obawiya, who is the director for medical ambassadors for 17 countries, he lives in Nigeria, I said, I can't imagine what you're talking about, Dio. I had never heard of any of these things. And when he talked more, I said, this has to be made aware to the churches in North America what is going on, so people can pray and they can give to these people who have lost everything. And somewhere we got to get this recorded more. Well, my background, as you said, is radio and television. I won awards in that area, and I kind of pushed the board of medical ambassadors, and eventually it ended up with me going over. And I'm 76 years old, which is pretty old to make not only the trip, but go up into some of those areas. Fortunately, it was not scary for me at all, but we were able to bring to where we were survivors of what has happened and then record their stories in a documentary. For example, I'm thinking of one pastor. His name was Pastor John. When they came into his village, he heard the gunshots. He called to his family. He had 6 kids and then his wife. And for whatever reason, they ran to the house, and he tried to get them to come with him. They run to the bush and hide. And they didn't. They stayed in the house, and when the Boko Haram came, they knew they were in the house. They just poured gasoline around the house. When I say house, it's not like my house or your house probably. It's kind of in between a hut and our houses. And they just poured gasoline around, set him on fire, and he lost all of his family. And he came, it took him 2 days to get to where we were so we could record his testimony. And he gave it a very, he doesn't speak English well, but he gave it in English. And when he was all done, I said, thank you. He just touched me deeply. And I said, thank you so much. And he said, no, I thank you. I said, why would you thank me after all you've gone through? He said, nobody knows, and you're listening to me tell my story. And so that's what I did. I recorded the stories of these people. Then I tried to weave it around the ministry of Dio Obawiya, who again is just a prince of a man. And he has been in a position that's very difficult because he's received death threats. And he knows, and when I talk to him, he says, I maybe have 3 years to live if I'm fortunate, but my life is in the hands of the Lord and such. So that's the background. Does that help you?
Yeah, it does. So your interest in this really came just by finding out there was a problem and investigating it a little bit further. Is that right?
Finding out there's a problem and a very dear personal friend involved. Because Dio has a family, a wife, and I'm concerned for him, and I wanted to pray for him. I pray for him every day, and I think having been there, I can pray far more intelligently. And then also these people whose lives have been absolutely shattered. I mean, this pastor lost his kids, he lost his wife, he lost his home, he lost his clothes, he lost his job, he lost his property, he lost everything. And what does he do? He wanders until he finds someone who can be of help to him, which is the role that Dio is in. But he has so many of these people now. And he says, wow, how do I care for them all? I give them clothes, I give them food that I have, I give them money. I don't have a lot of money. And he says, somewhere the church in other parts of the world has to know what's going on and come to our help, because we need you desperately now. So that's what motivated me.
How long was your interview on camera with Dio Obawiya?
We interviewed, there was an enclosed compound. There's a certain danger once you come with cameras and such. I went in with just one videographer and one sound man. And smaller cameras, there were places in the documentary we've done that I didn't get to, but some incredibly brave Nigerian videographers went there and got footage for us. The whole of when I interviewed him took it was late in the afternoon when we did that. It was easy to do because I know him very well, and I said, I don't just want to do a video of statistics and dead bodies. I need somehow for people to identify with a given person so that they can say, these are real people like us, and these are attractive people. So he became the dominant personality in the interview, but at the same time, there were other interviewees who came in from different places that we met.
What I'd like to do is air just a brief clip of this interview that took place so you kind of get a feel. So here's Dr. David Mains talking to Dio Obawiya at that compound that is fairly dangerous. This is just about a 1.5-minute clip. Let's air that.
You never thought about violence against Christians when you committed your life to Christ or when you became a leader in the cause of Christ. Would you like to go back and say, if I had known this, I wouldn't have followed you, Jesus?
Well, this is the first time that we are facing this violence in this dimension. This is a huge one. And if I had known that this kind of problem would be there before I became a Christian, I would have had a second thought, especially when I look at the response of the church to the present state of the situation. I think I would reconsider being a Christian. But now that I'm a Christian, I think is a price that we have to pay to defend our faith. The people that preach to me never talk to me about violence, but looking through the scriptures now, looking at the way the disciples were martyred, and looking at the experience of our Lord Jesus Christ, I think it's a price that is worth paying. Now I've come to live with the reality that I really have to count the costs, and I really have to carry my cross and follow. And so these things that are happening is a confirmation of the predictions in the scriptures and things that have been happening. But I have a hope, and the hope is that I'll see the Lord after paying this price. So I think it's worth it.
You know, that is just a snapshot of a pretty telling interview you had there. You can certainly grasp the feeling that he has of saying, there's danger all around here. Here's where my faith lies. What is going to be done with all these interviews to alert people to the problems in Nigeria that we just heard?
Well, I'm hoping that people will get a copy of the DVD. They can do that by going to medicalambassadors.org. That's the homepage, medicalambassadors.org, and then if they click on the Nigerian thing, it tells them how they can get a free DVD. And I'm hoping that people will not only watch it, but they will say to their Sunday school class or their small group or their missional community or their men's group or women's group, whatever, watch this with me. And what I want people to do is to be generous with these people who have lost everything. And then I also want them to pray for what's going on in Nigeria. And I tried in that interview, I don't know if you've seen it all, Steve, or not, but I tried in that interview to help people know how to pray, not only for those who are persecuted, but for the persecutors as well. Because I don't want to make this a Muslim-Christian fighting type of thing. They've been together in Nigeria many years. It's an unfortunate thing, but the truth is that God loves those militants as much as he loves you or he loves me. And so we have to pray for them as well. And God's doing a work in a lot of those people's lives, the dreams and visions that people are having, and they're affected by what they're doing. So I'm just praying that the evil will turn into good because of the rallying of God's people around the country.
What is the next step for you? Are you going to be going back to Nigeria, do you think?
I don't think I'll be allowed to go back in again, especially if the video gets wide exposure. Dio was kind of in a difficult position because the more exposure he gets, the more his life is in danger. Did you see Zero Dark 30, the film that was up for Academy Award?
Yeah, I know about it, sure.
Okay, well, in that, Jessica Chastain, she plays the role of the woman who finds out where Osama bin Laden is. And at the end of that film, two men try to assassinate her when she drives out of her compound in Pakistan, and they just unload with automatic rifles at her. Now, there was bulletproof glass in the car and the reinforced steel, and she jams it in reverse and goes back in, puts the garage door down, and so she's saved. But as soon as that happens, the State Department says, you come back home. You have to leave Pakistan and come back to Washington, D.C., because once you're on the hit list, the only way you get off is that you get killed. Well, if you can understand that from the secular video that was done, which is the reality the United States government knows in terms of militant Muslim groups, that's the position Dio is in. So as you watch him, he is a marked, I have a hard time saying it because I care deeply for him.
Yeah.
He's a marked man. And he's staying there with his family and with his wife. And so he's in a difficult spot, very difficult spot. And as are all Christians, your heart goes out when you watch it. You see the testimony. Some of them are very simple farm people talk about what has happened up in the north. But yeah, it's a tough road. It's not the only place where Christians are in danger serving the Lord. The whole of Medical Ambassadors, there are 4 or 5 of these different huge regional leaders who are in the very same situation. Yeah. And what they say is this is the start of what is going to happen all around the world. We're the first fruits of the martyrs. And
wow.
That may be true, who knows?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is a great, for people who are just getting introduced to this for the first time, this is a great beginning to see that video. And medicalambassadors.org, the place they can go, right?
Yes, right.
Dr. Mains, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Grab yours. All right. Thank you, Steve. What an interesting interview. Hey, I got a question for you. Was Jesus the first century rabbi? Well, there's a book about it, and we're going to talk to the author, Rabbi David Zaslow, coming up next year on Focus Today.